All right, we're live. Welcome back, everyone, to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, the Bad Luck Gamer, with my co-host Glue Boy.
Hello.
And today's subject is going to be interesting because we're going to be looking into what is like a core reason why arguments at the table happen, and arguments around tabletop in general. Being a content creator, especially, I have a unique perspective on this, being just a focal point for a lot of people to share their opinions on a variety of things. But, you know, if you're familiar with our show, we'll get to that in a bit, you know. So if you're not interested in that and you're watching this after the fact, or you're trying to catch up on the stream for whatever reason, check around the 25-minute mark. You know, usually we'll be talking about it by then. So before that, while we're letting people hop into the chat today, Alex, what's been up with you?
Well, it's because of Colton, but I'm back in the Warframe grind.
Yeah.
Like I'm here. I'm ready. And a large chunk of that is because like I stopped playing. I spent weeks hunting and working my ass off to get to the top level content, and then it just didn't work. So, and I couldn't figure out why and like what I did wrong. It's always those moments in like a thing where you're like, wow, okay, I guess all this work, just stop. I'm not gonna have fun with this right now. And I just put the game down, and then I just streamed my inventory to Colton, and he like went through and he's like, all right, here's how we can fix this, and it does work. I have a list in front of me. I'm working at that list, and it is we're back on top, and the updates they're still pumping out are very good. I need to make a Warframe video. I want to make a video on just an overview of this world because it's so fun. I have like a script mostly written out. I just gotta actually put my ass in my chair and do it.
Yeah, I need to be recording something here soon. Something I can't talk about quite yet, but soon.
Hell yeah.
A lot of cool stuff. End of this month. By next week, at some point or another, be on the lookout, because we're going to have probably a lot of really cool things starting to pop up on the channel again.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too, honestly. I've been itching to get back into the game a little bit. As far as my spell talk, I went in to get my eyes checked today, and obviously I need new glasses, and I've known this for a while, but you know, went to Costco like we normally do, and it's the one thing about Costco. Costco's really good because you can get good glasses there for relatively cheap compared to anywhere else. But they have to have the kind of glasses you want in stock, or your SOL.
Yeah, I think when the stint I wore glasses, I think that's where I got them.
Yeah, I mean, like
it's just a good spot for it.
If you have a membership, why not? It's almost half as expensive as anywhere else.
I need, if it didn't cost money and I had other things I'm worried about money-wise, I need to go get my eyes like checked again and maybe get glasses, because like my problem is I just have that specific type of vision where up close things are fine. Far away, that's when it gets bad. And like far away relative, it's pretty close. And my problem is most of my work, my job, and like then my YouTube stuff, it's all I'm looking at things close up.
Yeah.
So when I'm wearing those glasses, it just hurts. And then I take it off and my eyes don't get focused on, like, used to the glasses, so then it hurts and I have migraines repeatedly and it sucks. And apparently I was just constantly given the wrong glasses. I need glasses that allow you to like also look at things close up. It's like there's like a little bit at the bottom or something. Yeah. Something like that. And I just never knew that was a thing. Every time I wore glasses, I was a child.
Interesting. Yeah, no, bifocals. I used to have bifocals for a while. Then because my left eye can drift if I'm trying to focus on something too hard. That was a lot harder to deal with when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, it's become less and less common. I can't even remember the last time my eyes have crossed. I can still kind of do it at will, but it's not as easy or as obvious as it used to be. But yeah, and they even have like invisible bifocals where they don't even have like the little thing on the bottom. They just, if you look at the bottom, they see automatically close up. So
Yeah, I need that. I need to do that. And then I looked into how expensive doing all of that was. I recently got dental insurance. I don't need to spend more money on that.
yeah, for me, it's not much of a choice. I'm just have bad vision and I need glasses. But these glasses I'm wearing now were always just like a half step. They weren't my actual prescription, just like a step to wear for a year to get my eyes more used to a stronger prescription. And then I just never went back to get other glasses because life and, stuff. So,
Yeah.
we're in the process now, but I'm at this point where I do want to get a very specific look for glasses, obviously, because I wear glasses all the time. If I'm going to wear something all the time, I want them to be really good and to look good. And I just couldn't find anything at Costco that I really liked. And so we went to another place and we found perfect looking glasses for like 3 times the price.
Yeah, I was waiting. I was like, oh, there has to be a catch.
Yeah, they're $809.
Christ, dog.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, it's glass. Like, I don't know.
No, that's... Well, okay, so part of that is insurance racketeering.
Yes, 100%.
The like, businesses don't have a choice but to make things super expensive. So that you then have to use your insurance to make it affordable.
That's so annoying.
I know.
I'm happy if anything, I found that like my town, I'm pretty sure it's definitely growing more and more. It seems like a lot of these places that aren't just, the hospital have systems of like, instead you're in a much cheaper subscription service to this office.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I found with my dentist. Because I have insurance and like mine's decent because thankfully Washington has like a good system in place.
Yeah.
But I was looking down and it was like, yeah, for $60 a month, you get like slightly better than what my insurance is offering. It's like, oh, okay. Like, you're uninsured, but like that just means you can only go to this place.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a bad gig if you just have lived here your whole life. And I'm wondering if there's definitely some like eye doctor place here too that has the same shit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely could look, but then again, it's eyeglasses are different because they have brands associated with them, and the brands cost certain amounts and yada 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 yada. And like, to be fair, right? I normally glasses cost for me probably somewhere between $200 and $300. It's just that's just how it is because I have transition lenses because I'm very light sensitive, and I get like anti-glare and stuff on my glasses that would just make it easier to like look at monitors and stuff like that. I don't have to worry about like struggling to look at a screen or like the sun hitting my glasses in a way. It just makes it difficult to see. Glasses are expensive. They're also just very, very a particular craft, right? You have to have them.
There's a lot of weird finicky bits because there's you're wearing big old hunks of glass on your face. It would suck if you got ones that reflected the sun into your eye. That would be ass.
Well, and it's just also like, it's not like a standard, like someone could just make glasses in their backyard kind of thing. They're very like precision made to accommodate for how your vision works. And
yeah, they're like very minute with like what your prescription is. There can be very just tiny changes that make a giant impact on it.
Yeah, and it's crazy huge.
It's nuts.
It's
nuts. We figured that out.
My optometrist told me my new glasses will be much the same, but just a stronger prescription. It's just like everything is kind of more or less the same, but they're just a little bit stronger, and yet the vision difference is actually pretty wild. So
nice.
It's just clear, and it feels like soon, hopefully, I'll be able to see, the best I've been able to see in like 5 years or something.
those moments where you've just been wearing a weaker pair, or like you, in my case, like don't wear glasses, and then you're given your prescription lens in that moment of like, oh my god, I can see. Hi, like everything looks like it's in 4K, which is a
Yeah.
dumb statement, of course, but it's that moment is always very fun.
Yeah. So, uh, for me, it's just a situation of like I haven't been working a full-time job for like 4 years or something like that. And so it's just like we got one pair of glasses, and it's like, do we want to spend another $200 next year?
Yeah,
Never felt like we had the ability. It's starting to feel a bit better now, and my
that's
mother's
good.
helping, of course. But like we have a lot of other things. Like we're trying to put a hose spigot outside so we can have a hose.
That
And
is big. Like,
yeah, and then also we got to get our car fixed because if you haven't been here on prior streams, a deer ran into our car and messed one of the doors up pretty severely. So
yeah, my roommate had the same thing happen. Like a deer jumped out in front of him, and for his car got totaled because of that.
yeah,
Like, it can get rough. I am happy that nothing worse happened. Like,
yeah,
sucks it happened in the first place, but like his engine was crumbled, kind of shit.
it can
It can
happen. It's
get bad.
really easy because
Yeah,
they're a multi-100-pound animal, and you're hitting them at like such a speed. That could have happened
exactly.
if I had driven pretty much any other way, but I drove in a way that like we wouldn't hit the deer head like straight on
That's the best way.
because the
Like,
deer just kept moving, and it saw us, and it was walking and then jogging, then sprinting as to get across the road before our car could get there, except we're a car and we're going
yeah,
60 miles an hour. So like I was like slowing down the best I could at that speed and turning, and then the deer just boom hit the front, like the front corner of our car, and then rolled off, I guess. And I don't know, after I pulled off the road, the deer was gone, so it didn't die,
mm.
at least on impact.
If it did, it went off somewhere else. But
Hmm.
like, yeah, that's a good call, and like in the moment decision making.
Because I couldn't have stopped is the
No,
thing.
you can't. Like, you're going 60. You can't just slam the brakes. Like, you
Yeah,
can't do that.
like I slowed down, I saw the deer because I know the stories, so like I was slowing down, and I was probably going like 40ish at the time that the deer had actually hit us. Just dumb animals. And what's weirder is it didn't do the thing that you hear the story about deers doing, right? Where it's like,
Just stand there.
well, there's that. That's media interpretation of it. But like usually it's the story of if an animal's crossing a street but then gets spooked, they go back the way they came because they know at least that side is safe.
Oh, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, this deer fucking wasn't doing that. He was
It
just,
was like, I gotta cross. I'm already partway through.
yeah, he was just like, I'm going this way, man. I don't know what to tell you. And like, yeah, so, and that's going to be expensive. So it's just like, I don't know what we're going to do because I don't want to cheat myself out on glasses because I'm going to wear them literally every day, and people are going to see me and associate how I overall look based somewhat on my glasses.
Yeah, it is just a pseudo, like, permanent fashion accessory. Because you
Yeah.
have to wear it to see.
So, getting some wonky looking glasses is not going to be better for me than just spending more money. So,
Yeah, big old like hunk square ones.
yeah. Well, I do want like some slightly more square-ish ones than what because right now I have like rimless on the bottom.
Yeah.
Which I liked, and I liked it for a bit, but I had a set a few years ago, like 6 years ago, that I really liked. No, not more than 6 years ago. It was like 9 years ago. I really liked, and then I got a pair of glasses that were just like a wireframe that weren't too special one way or the other. And I got these, and these were pretty good. But I kind of want to go back to what I had before because a lot of people like those. And I went and I tried these glasses on, and we're like, oh, those look really good, you know.
Mm.
And that's another thing as well. Like picking out glasses is so specific. It can be the slightest dimension off, and it'll look completely weird on your face.
Oh yeah, like it is an annoying process to pick. And I always struggled with that lens of like I would look at it and I'd be like, this looks fine, like it looks like the last pair I put on. But then like someone else would point out to me, like mainly my parents would be like, oh, this looks bad for this reason, you should do this one. And I'd be like, yeah, that does, I think that looks good. I'm the worst judge of like my own fashion.
Yeah.
I'm so garbage at it. Uh so that was my struggle. I'm like, I don't know what looks good on my face. I just know not to get the giant circular ones. I'm not like pulling a Harry Potter
Yeah.
cosplay. Those are, unless you're a very particular type of person, I don't think they're very flattering.
Yeah. I definitely tried some glasses on today that I'm like, in another life, if I was doing another line of work or something, I could see myself wearing glasses like this.
Yeah.
But like my overall style, I like they have to be square and they have to be kind of thin, where my eyes sit like in the middle of the lens, and then they have to be wide enough where they don't look like they're pinching on my face because of the shape of my head, because my head's kind of a little big. So they have to be wide enough and thin enough, but not too thin. And when I'm adding like a full frame to it, it's a little bit more difficult. Because then the rims can't be like a little too thick. It looks a little weird. It looks like way more nerdy if they're just a little too thick. But if they're a little too thin, they're just not quite the right look. And then it's also just like the angle, because sometimes they're angled a little up, sometimes they're kind of like curved and down. That can make a huge difference. So it's like, it's very, very particular, which is why I didn't end up finding anything at Costco and went to another place. And then of course I find the perfect glasses and they're like 3 times more expensive.
Yeah. I see, I got a square ass head. And so like I it was always the struggle of like, yeah, you got ones that look nice, but the shape of it is now like bending weird around my head. It's like, okay, well this one fits perfectly, but it's massive nerd glasses and I look like shit.
Right.
It's a lot. That I understand why they have so many like just glasses. I'm still baffled by like how expensive they got the racket going, but
well, and yeah,
they got variety.
Racketeering.
Yeah, exactly.
Insurance multiplies the price of like an actual thing by like 5 times.
Yep.
Just so you have to have insurance. So you spend more than that in a year, but it's like it looks smaller in the immediate time.
I always loved the random bit where I would go to Rite Aid, get some meds, and it just based on it with Adderall, the Adderall shortage, sometimes it's a little tough. Where I would go in and they just cost different every time. And then the times where the pharmacist has told me, well, it was going to cost you $30, but I'm charging you without your insurance, so now it's $10. It's like, okay. I don't know how that tracks, but all right.
So, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, living in America, it's just what you have to deal with. There's no way around it. They're too deep in the legislation. They're too deep in overall, like, how our system works. And we have for-profit, like, medication and stuff like that. So, it's...
Yeah, there's not... It's not super likely to change with just how much big money is being pushed to the people who could change it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, don't change your system. Make taxes really complicated. Make Medicare really complicated.
Yeah,
we profit from it.
Well, and then there's certain parts that are pushed more into like a luxury part of how insurances work, like dental. Like a lot of places offer medical, but they don't offer dental. and they're like they're designed differently and all kinds of stuff, and it's lame.
Super lame.
But at the same time, not to defend how it works in general, but like I wouldn't be unbiased if I didn't at least say there are some aspects of it that push these things to levels that like countries with free healthcare don't, because it's a product. So you want to make it as good as possible to get more people to buy your product. And so that's why like American healthcare is considered some of the best in the world, because, you know, it's so expensive because they're incentivized to do it expensive. And the same thing with like dental and like glasses and stuff like that, is you got companies who are actually producing things to sell to people for ridiculous prices. So,
and then on the other hand with it, there's a lot of times where you would see Europe has a better healthcare system for something, or even like Cuba has been doing some major shit. A lot of times it's purely government like subsidy, like government grants that are doing that.
Yeah, well,
and it's the difference that it's being invested in.
Yeah. So there's it's a very complicated thing, and like a lot of people are just, price is high, that's bad, but that's not inherently bad. It's just only bad if you can't afford it, which is why like it is bad, and I'm not defending healthcare. I think our healthcare is terrible, and it would be better if more people could get treated for not, you know, bankrupting amounts of money, than a few people can get slightly better medical care.
Yeah, my buck always stops at the concept of like one accident and now you're like economically fucked for like the rest of your life.
Yeah.
If you're not just wealthy, it's like, oh yeah, just never fall, never get in an ambulance. There's always like those worries.
Well, and you know what the crazy part is? It's not even like wealthy, right? It's just so many people live at or close to the poverty line, like that everything just seems like, oh man, Mr. Fancy Pants over there can go to the dentist, you know?
Yeah, which is insane. Like that's, it's something like that. I having dealt with it, like even just a minor way, I found out when I got my filling like a couple weeks ago, that it's good someone canceled and I got to go in early because like the cavity that went underneath a filling that someone fucked up like way earlier in my life, it was very close to getting to the core nerve of my tooth, and it's all out, and it's good. Because yeah, if it gets to the core, that's when you got to do some extraction and like actual surgery shit. That's way more expensive.
Yeah,
it's like that's a luxury to like apparently.
Yeah, right. Well, and it's the thing, right? Is this because it's not because you can't necessarily earn that money. It's just that there's just more businesses offering less that you typically end up working for most people. Like, you know, I know so many people who just work at some retail place or something like that, because retail is just one of the most common jobs out there, and they're just making poverty wages, and there's no upward momentum. Your experience at that business is pretty much worthless, because where else are you going to use retail experience other than at retail?
Yeah, it's I found a great video by some I think it's some like economist professor or something, and it was such a great video on the development of diplomas being kind of useless for job applications.
Yeah,
as it's like changed and changed and changed throughout the years. The history of it's very interesting, to where like it makes sense why we're here now. It is just like a bad solution that then worsened and worsened and worsened because of just management feeling it's like, oh well, we got to do it this way because we don't want to pay for education, we don't want to pay to educate our workers, we should get the government to do it for us. And then it goes and spirals from there, and it's crazy. It's so wild and annoying.
Well, and also just how our economy has expanded into a mostly luxury market, which it wasn't back in like the 70s.
No.
But, you know, because like the whole idea of stop buying your avocado toast and Starbucks and whatever and save your money, it's because luxuries were way more expensive back in like the 60s, 70s era. But because businesses prioritized making those as cheaply and as, you know, as much as possible, the market flipped into luxury items are now just affordable. You know, you can get a nice TV. Like we have a big ass TV that was like $500 in our living room. And
I was wondering how expensive that TV was because it looks nice.
Yeah, so it was like 500 and something bucks, right?
Yeah, it's not bad.
When I was a kid, having a TV that big meant you had money.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember going into Costco, seeing all like the giant TVs on display, and the price tag was fucking massive.
Yeah,
it's it's different now because now the thing that those companies making the TVs are doing is they get you in there, they're selling ad space on the TV.
Yep.
And then they're getting like streaming packages, and a lot of those TVs come pre-packaged with streaming services, so they're probably getting some money tossed up that way. So yeah, they're just assuring the cost a different direction than actually making the TV and putting it in your hands.
Yeah, but like back in the day, you know, houses was something you could actually save for. You know, you just need to put like a few thousand down, equivalent in today's money. But now that's not the case because, you know, like building materials keep going up and up and up in price, and land is becoming a more scarce resource because people keep buying more and more. And so it's something where if you look at like proportionally to what you make, how much a luxury item is versus how much a necessity is, like healthcare and stuff like that, you'll see that the mandatory things have gone up and the less mandatory things have gone down because, you know, who figured? Big business people discovered that people are more willing to pay for things they need than want.
It's actually one of the early things you can look at if the economy is going to take a hit in the next like while, which is happening.
Yeah.
The way you'll see it in advertising is it then turns into luxury goods cheaper, and they are marketed very specifically in a like, hey, you know what? Treat yourself. You deserve this. That is the language used when money is getting tight for people, because then they're spending less money on luxuries, and their revenue goes massively down because they're saving for the important things.
Yeah.
So then they're trying to convince you to do it that way. When the economy's doing fine, it's a lot of times like, check out this cool ass thing. Isn't this sick? Like you can always tell how the economy's doing from marketing.
Yeah. So it's fascinating, but we should get to the subject today.
Yeah, we went political, I guess.
A little bit. Well, you know, it's relevant because glasses, but
yeah, that's what we're dealing with in our life. So
yeah. So let's talk about TTRPGs and why you are probably arguing terribly for whatever it is that you are arguing about. So let me paint the picture of a standard argument at a table. You are trying to do a thing. You have like you want to cast fireball into a room that has like an alchemy lab in it, right? Because you're thinking it's going to explode. There's got to be flammable things in there. If I fireball into that room, it should do more damage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you argue this to the GM, and the GM is like, well, that's not how it works. Or they're like, I don't want you to one-shot this encounter just because you used a fireball in this alchemist encounter, you know? Because like, when do you fight alchemists? Very typically in or around their alchemical things in some form or fashion. And the GM wants you to have an interesting encounter with the alchemists because they use things that other enemies typically don't. They throw different types of elements at you that give you certain types of debuffs. They're not particularly strong, but because they give you a bunch of debuffs, it kind of makes for a more interesting fight. So the GM is mechanically using the rules to provide for you an experience, because that is what the game provides, and you are trying to use your powers in interesting ways, which is the fun of tabletop, to get advantages in those kind of situations. But when you're arguing, you're just like, there's nothing flammable in that room. There has to be. Aren't there like alchemist fires or something in there? It doesn't make sense to me that this doesn't do a thing. And the GM's like, well, yes, but there's nothing in the rules that says a fireball hitting an alchemist vial explodes, right? So that is one type of argument. But let me give you another one, and then we'll break it down why these are just bad arguments in general. Let's reverse it, right? You have an ability that works in a very specific way. Like, for instance, in our game, and this is kind of one of the reasons why I brought it up, because it came up in our game a lot. I gave a player a ability that removes evidence. And that can be kind of vague. And these kind of vague abilities exist in a lot of tabletop situations. A lot of games have some spell or another that can just be kind of vaguely used. Even prestidigitation can be kind of vaguely used, given a scenario. And we'll use prestidigitation because it's something that will come up in more people's situations, right? So you want to steal like a item from a shop, or at least you want it for like way cheaper. So what do? You cast prestidigitation on it to give like the metal luster on it like a blue or purple tint or something. Like, you're a smart player, you know that indicates that there's some like flaw in the metal, or it's like not exactly what it is. And so you are like, all right, hey, NPC, this looks not great, but I'll buy it from you for like half price. And the GM is like, well, he probably wouldn't have stocked it if he knew there was something wrong with it. Or, this is the world of magic, he's going to be suspicious of magic. So
yeah, like, are you lying?
Yeah, so like, Jim's like, all right, you know what? Go ahead, make for me like a deception check or whatever. And then one of the players goes, okay, let me give you guidance, or let me give you some kind of buff. And it's like, well, the GM's like, well, yeah, but they're going to see you cast magic. It's like, okay, but we knew this beforehand, right? So why don't we just do this beforehand and then we do it? And the GM's like, well, but you didn't think about it before. And it just becomes this huge argument of semantics, of like different things that are not necessarily rule-based, because the GM is giving you a rule-based thing and the players are using rule-based things, but because of like how they're interpreted or the order or all kinds of things like that, it can just get out of hand.
Mm-hmm. It's another example of this, but it's always the struggle of running a lot of those games, a lot of these arguments. It's not the grander point, but some of these arguments in tabletop games are oftentimes the melding of just real world knowledge that players have and the GM has, and like where the differences is. Because I've had moments, this comes up weirdly often, and I'm surprised it's not common knowledge. I get reminded of it in tabletop, of a similar example to that like store idea. It is, if you are working with a mineral, a rock, a gem, anything like that, there is the hardness scale to determine what things are, if it's really what it's meant to be, and that's one of the ways you determine what you're even holding in the first place. And how you test the hardness scale is you scratch it with your fingernail. And the softest metal we have mineral is gold. That scratches really easily with a fingernail. Diamond is the hardest. And as such, nothing happens. There's no scuffing. There's not even surface level like smudge. It's just nothing happened. And I've used that in tabletop, and then it's always that moment of oh wait, this isn't common knowledge, and the GM didn't account for it. So it's not something that you can really throw out. and utilize, and then try to use as your main argument for why a thing should work. It is a fun factoid. So GMs out there, feel free to use that. That's something I learned in like high school physics and chemistry.
Right. And so in all these scenarios, right, why would you think, well, and this is to Alex because he's the one who's here, but like I want y'all to think, why do these arguments result in this way? What do you think is like the key factor?
I at least have my own kind of thing with it. Personally, I think when you get into a game, and a lot of times you're arguing this, the argument goes on as long as possible, and a lot of times starts with the fact that it's always, you're just arguing in lens of the game world, and like you are inside of the game. You are a lot of times having a discussion, an argument that should be an out of game discussion on rules and like how this is a game we are playing. But a lot of times it's reached through the very unproductive lens of like, let's debate realism in our fantasy world and game. I think a lot of times most arguments would be solved quicker if it was taken out of world and like into our real world at the table.
Yeah, you're very close to what it actually is. I mean, that's a way to solve it for sure. But the reason is, and you kind of you hit on it a little bit, is it's a difference in expectation.
Yes, that's a good way of putting that.
So the reason why this happens is the players are told often to think creatively. It's a role-playing game. You can kind of do whatever you want, and we'll roll with it. We'll do rule of cool, all this kind of stuff, right?
Mm.
Except for when the GM has a specific plan or wants the story to go in a specific way. And then that goes out the window. And this takes place in a lot of different ways. And like, for instance, it would be a different question, right? If you asked a GM, hey, GM, do you think there is a way I can use my abilities to get this item cheaper from the merchant? And a lot of GMs would say, yeah, if you're creative enough, sure. Right? So the GM already has a openness to the idea if you're willing to satisfy that for them. But when you look at that from a purely like mechanical standpoint, the GM is saying, yes, in game you can do this. You know, so the player does a thing, but whether the GM accepts it or not is kind of irrelevant to actually what should or should not happen, right? If the player is using mechanics, is taking a chance, and is using some level of effort, a GM should just make it work because they were already accepting of that idea. And as long as the players are putting in what they feel like is enough effort, they should. Conversely, a player should be aware that if the thing they're doing seems a little too simple, it probably isn't going to warrant the reward of what they're looking for being creative.
Yeah, like it's another similar lens with what you're touching. I think the idea of this being what is your expectation going into this makes sense, and you gotta like see both perspectives. As someone who like really only plays at this point for most of my time, there's the expectation a lot of times when I'm going into a game that I am playing a game where I am entering a fantasy world. I am in this world. I am in this game. Like I method act a little bit with my characters, so like I'm there. And then a lot of times the GM is coming at these scenarios. Sure, they'll have a lot of moments, and it goes back and forth of like, yeah, the game, like we're in this world, we're immersed. But then a lot of times as a GM, you're arbitrating rules. Yep. You are making sure things are working. And so when you're hit with something that's like, yeah, okay, realistically, if this was in real life, sure, but we're not in real life, we're in a game. This is a game that has to function as a game, so things work. And then that always hits that kind of stop sign of, well, this is like a world I'm immersed in. This is like a world I live in imagination. What are you telling me that there are rules and precedent we can't set? I think that just hits a lot of these discussions where it's like, well, realistically I can do this. Yeah, realistically you can, but we have to do it this way. And then when it's argued poorly, ooh, that's when it gets longer and longer.
Yeah, well, and it's because a lot of people will try to argue from certain perspectives, and they'll try to argue from like accurate, but from a certain perspective, accurate kind of statements, you know, like the whole fireball hitting a alchemist table, right? Like, because maybe in a prior scene or something, a player was able to use a sling and got a crit on an enemy, and the GM was like, oh, okay, so yeah, you happened to hit one of their alchemist vials and it exploded on them to dress up the crit, right, to make it sound fun and interesting and to make it more cool. But then like, oh, but my fireball can't now, which, you know, is the thing where it's always going to happen, and no matter how good of a table you're at, it's unavoidable that it will happen to some degree. Even the best tables with the best GMs or anything, it can happen at. It's just a thing where technically people are both right in some situations, but determining what is most right is just based on a perspective, right? Like, you want the player to feel like they've done something cool, sure, but you want the player to earn that. And the players are not necessarily thinking that they're thinking on a thing. Like, it's also the thing of sometimes using a fireball to hit a bunch of alchemist items and everything is a really hard thought one idea for one type of player and not for another. Like, for one player, it took them a lot more effort to think of that plan than another type of player who that was just like an easy thing for them to do because and so it can be uneven in that way because a player did it in a slightly different way, even though the same event occurred in a different way, you know? And it's something that is difficult. And in addition to this, right, I also want to throw in the fun perspective of talking about any TTRPG and determining what classes are good or not good, because this is also an argument that happens a lot in tabletop. And I'm going to use my own experience in this because it's fascinating. So many of you who have watched stuff on my channel probably know I made a updated tier list for Pathfinder 2nd Edition towards the end of last year, where I rated each of the classes on 3 categories and then amalgamated all those scores together to give them an overall score of what they could do. It was based on combat, on exploration, and on roleplay. And the comments are very indicative of the people who understood the video, did not understand the video, and just disagreed with my points on a video.
Yeah, like, I disagree with some of your class placement. Like, the difference is, like, I understand the point of your video, and I'm like, yeah, these are all great points, but I like this thing. And those are great comments. Those are great comments when it's just good-heartedly discussing it. And then there are other comments that are very, very dumb and very funny. I do enjoy the comments of those videos.
Yeah. They're always super interesting because it's something where, especially in a game like Pathfinder, like more especially in Pathfinder, it's almost impossible to make a bad choice when it comes to how you're running the game. There's optimal, sure, but there's not really bad. And so in that particular video, I rank fighter really, really low because while fighter is probably one of, if not the best class in combat, it is dog water in literally every other category.
Yeah, and like for like my own, I'm pulling up I just pulled up your tier list and my tier list to remind myself. For me, fighter is on like top tier because I like the freedom it gives me to come up with it myself. Like that's the very simple like, oh yeah, we just disagree with the method it's done in, different preferences, and also just as a grade, it's objectively correct grading in what you put it. I would then, if I was using your thing, I'd be like, yeah, this objectively it should be down here, but I like it, so it goes higher.
Well, yeah, but it's even not that, not even like a personal bias thing, but as much as like what people interpret what I'm trying to say. So when I say fighter is terrible at roleplay, what I'm saying is the class in its features in its entirety provides very little in the way of benefiting your roleplay whatsoever. The class doesn't give you roleplay stuff.
It does not have like a story that you're kind of building. It can look at and be like, the story is that I am this exemplar. That the exemplar is like a really good example of just a class that's forcing you to make a character and story built around it.
Yeah,
and it does it really well.
That.
And then fighter, if you're going to make an interesting fighter, you are making an interesting character, personality, backstory. You are building someone cool that is just good at fighting. There's nothing in the class that is going to help you bump that up except for abilities. And that's just not the same thing.
Well, and not even that, but their abilities aren't roleplay based either. Their abilities are, I hit you better or with doing certain like status effect.
I do a funny action and you take damage instead of the standard action and you take damage.
Right. And there's so many times there's people who are just like, do you not understand how free it is that my fighter is just like, I can talk about how I trained with the bow ever since I was a child and I was raised by elves and I can hit an apple from 50 feet away. Like, that's story. And it's like, yes, that is interesting story. All of that was just made up because you are creative and not because the class gave it to you.
The class isn't doing that. You could have that exact same story with a ranger, a rogue, a swashbuckler. You could have that same story. And like the class, if it's doing something fun roleplay wise with a high roleplay metric, is giving you something to build the story out of. You're not doing it all yourself.
Yeah.
And like I love the freedom that fighter gives me to create a bunch of stuff because a lot of my ideas I find out just work best as fighter. I would not say that fighter is the greatest class if you want something really roleplay heavy. Like you want something really like interesting that gives you a lot of access and stuff outside of, just the mechanics of it. But it depends on what you're trying to get out of it. Like that's why I can disagree with just the sheer my own bias on where your class placement is. But like your metrics all make sense and I agree with the reason they're put there.
Yeah. And in using a different category as an example as well. Exploration. Fighter has almost zero class features related to like investigating a place, talking with people, finding information. Like they have one feat that makes it easier for them to recall knowledge on a creature.
Yeah, that's how you can do some I guess some utility, some kind of exploration, but you have to hit it. So like you can't really do that outside of combat.
Well, and I would say that's a decent ability, sure.
It is. It's a very cool
but
ability.
It's one ability in like their whole list.
That is the big kicker. It's one.
And the thing is, right, people will say, yeah, but see, I'm a fighter, so I'm really good at this attribute and this attribute, so I would take athletics or I would take agility, and there's all kinds of things I can do with those. And it's like, yes. So would any other strength or agility-based class. And also, the class is not giving you anything for those.
It is like a real statement on the class when you can say the most interesting roleplay decision or roleplay act your character now has is, congratulations, you decided to not use the dump stat. Like, wow, crazy. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. So, and also, hi, Dead Phoenix, how you doing? So the thing is right, I saw a comment like a couple months ago that's just like, I saw your placement of fighter and I knew this list was garbage. And it's like, 2 weeks to causing your RPG. Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, I see you did not listen to anything I said in the video. Because I said fighter is like god tier combat class. If that's what you're looking for, if that's how you judge how good a class is or isn't, my list actually addresses that, but doesn't give that as their final score. I tell you in the video how each class fares in combat, like overall. And so it's like, arguments in the TTRPG space are just inherently based on a difference in expectation. What you think is good, what you think works, how you think something works. I mean, we've all had that situation. You feel you role-played the shit out of that moment in a scene. You were doing all the right things, saying all the right things. But then the GM just makes you roll. And you roll garbage. And then the character you're talking to just treats you like you just spoke like a Neanderthal for the last 5 minutes.
That has happened so many times to Vale in Q's game. Like, so many times. And it is, and to me, it's happened to me too, because we both played charismatic people. It's rough. It's why that's a big selling point for the, sometimes you're good enough you don't need a roll. But it's always that feels bad moment when your expectations for, like, you were buying into something in some way, and then, oh, dang, it didn't hit. And then in the moment, it can feel bad. Like, I am clearly very over it. There was not, even in the moment, there's no hard feelings. A minor version that happened on Tuesday, where I'm like, as I said on that, I was like, I felt like I was yes-anding, but it felt like I was getting shut down a bit. However, I understood exactly, like, the point you were making, and I agree with you. So there's obviously no hard feelings, and I don't actually care. But there's, like, in the moment, you're just like, dang, this kind of sucks. But then if you let that fester, that's where arguments can get really bad. I'm good in the case that I trust Cam, and I can regulate any moment like that. And I'm like, oh yeah, but this is like for this and this reason, so it makes sense.
Yeah, well, and to be fair, right, one of the reasons why I brought this whole conversation up in general is our group, I feel like, has had a very good track record of being able to handle these moments incredibly well. And I've been doing this long enough where I've had these moments not go incredibly well. So it's interesting to look at, like, what are the differences? Why do these things happen? And when it comes to, like, the conversation thing in general, when you feel like you're doing all the right things or whatever, just because you feel like you're doing it correctly doesn't actually mean you're doing it correctly. It just feels like it. You're like, oh yeah, I'm doing all the things I feel like I need to do, right? But that doesn't, but like, how do you know that is the case? You know, how do you know exactly that would be any more or less convincing to an actual person in those kind of scenarios, right? And that happens a lot in a lot of games where a player thinks they're being very clever when they're really not, but they're so wrapped up in the moment. It feels that it feels like something isn't connecting that should, you know? Yeah. And the initial reason why I brought this up in the first place wasn't even the interpretation of that. It was just, I'm doing the role playing, but then the GM throws the rules at me, and then the dice hate me.
Yeah, there's often, like, just, I think that's the way of putting it is just sometimes you think you're doing something very good, and it turns out you're not. And there's a really easy answer to solving a lot of those moments, and it's just communicating.
Yeah.
Like, just communicate it, because half of those problems go away if you communicate intent.
Right.
If you're saying, oh, this is what I'm trying to do, and this is what I want to do. And then, like, a person who's like also there to have a good time should be like, okay, like now we'll hash out how we can go about doing that thing.
Right.
And it's the fun bit where if you start going through like tabletop horror story stuff, you're just like, the answer is you should have talked about it. Like you should have just stopped in that moment and said like, hey, what's up, man? Like what's going on?
Also,
And
I see a lot of people bringing up the fighter discourse, which is hilarious.
Yeah, it's I like fighter. I love fighter, but I think I'd be the first person to admit that like there are better classes if you're trying to go for cool roleplay stuff for like mechanical. Fighter isn't that. You're doing all of the legwork. And then a lot of times it's going to dictate, do you like doing that legwork? I do, so I love fighter for that reason. And I like the mechanics of Pathfinder, so it's a win-win. If you like something, I'm of the firm belief that you should be the first person to see and point out a flaw with it. You should not be blind in your appreciation and your love for something. You should be able to critique it. But like, honestly, this is the big thing with a lot of the arguments and the discussions with tabletop. The one that gets me, and it's the one I hate, and it's why I especially said earlier a lot of times these arguments stay inside that realm of in the world and the arguing between mechanics and realistically this is what's happening. I hate that a lot of people think the answer to these discussions is to somehow put in-game consequences for actions or for like these arguments. The big one is like, oh, the players are doing something, they're arguing, they're being annoying in this aspect. Let me make a really, really strong NPC that'll kill them instantly.
Yeah, let me make a point.
I hate that. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't help. No one learns anything, and it's just gonna make people more mad. When instead, you take that moment, you pause, and you're like, all right, let's be very clear. Like, this is happening because of this reason. I can't let you fireball like the alchemist shop and insta-kill everything, because you're asking me to put in a game with all these like cool mechanics and like gameplay. You're asking me to give you an insta-kill button. And you need to understand balance-wise, I cannot do that. Like, that type of discussion needs to happen more often in tabletop games, I think.
Yeah, and the thing is, right, is that conversation can happen, but either one side or the other is incapable of having a proper discourse, or just will phrase things in a way that seem hostile or overly like pointed or the like. If any of y'all want to see some good discourse in tabletop, take a look at some of our recent the 333 live streams, because usually towards the end of them I talk about what happened in a session, talking to the players about the rules, because we're actively play testing the 333, and we have a lot of good discussions, and there are sometimes some arguments that occur, and I feel like we've as far as those streams have always come to a pretty good conclusion towards the end of them. So if you're interested in seeing like an actual representation, or at least our representation of that, definitely go check those out. But like
the big kickers, we argue with we argue with good faith and actual like appreciation for each other. So like, we're not trying to get an own, we're trying to communicate points. And then depending on as it goes on, because I sometimes this happens with arguments, and it's why like those points of like you try to take it out of game don't work sometimes, is I think you get in the moment, people can get sucked into whatever intention they're having and whatever perspective they're coming from. And so like actually this is another argument we had on stream with it, when it was the discussion of my character's bond coming up, that he has two roles I was trying to express mechanically, like where we had that thing of like, how could I have been more clear about this, where it was purely because the discussion started with me fully sucked into the game universe, to the point where like there was that block put up of like, I was not taking in that you were asking a mechanical question. I thought you were asking backstory information so you could play a character, because that happens more often in games for me, and that's where I was sucked into. And then those discussions can spiral because somebody, even unintentionally, is just not taking that step out of their own mind to like look at it. Like that just happens.
Yeah. Well, and actually, so a really good point as well. Because we were just talking about it here a little bit ago about how you were trying to, like, in roleplay convince a character, and I didn't think about this point until well after the fact, but you felt like you were role playing well and you were doing all the right things, right? But what actually was happening was you were saying that your character was doing the right things. Because, to be fair, right, you were trying to have a conversation with someone over the course of hours, but of course we're not going to do that. So
No.
you were trying to shortcut it in a way. But see, the thing is right, rather than actually going through and putting in the footwork to actually, like, role play that out, you kept saying, like, over the course of the time I'm doing this or I'm doing that or whatever, which is exactly what a role is supposed to interpret for you, that your character would be doing those things. So
Yeah.
why it ended up having to become a role in the first place and why you didn't, like, actually do it is because we actually didn't have the conversation that needed to happen to have the character be actually convinced. Because, of course, we were trying not to, because it would take a couple hours and that's not realistic. And so there's that kind of miss where you felt like you were doing the right things because in your mind you were envisioning how your character was going through these conversations.
When the part of the intention too was the stating the intent to, like, what I'm doing, role playing it through, and then waiting for the yes and that gives me, like, a slight springboard to progress a conversation, when the character realistically stonewalling in that moment. And so, like, I was waiting for, like, all right, come on, improv buddy, yes and then nothing. But it's because that was the hitting of intention and, like, what was actually occurring in the moment.
Right, so you're waiting for me to give you, like, an in on the conversation.
Not even like a full in, like, oh, let me give you this information I'm being cagey about, but something slightly more than a yeah. It's like, that's what I was waiting for.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I said several times, he doesn't seem very intent on talking about it.
Yeah.
So, and the perfect example for everyone to see, just like the talking about the interpretations of the moment and everything like that.
Yeah, you go through, like, it in different lenses. It's another bit where I am just very used to games that are, like, resoundingly conversations that occasionally have dice rolls.
Yeah,
like,
but I mean, that's
I'm
not
very used to.
That's not what we weren't having there.
Like, I was waiting for the conversation to occur.
Yeah, but you were you were trying to talk to a guy and get secrets out of him when he didn't want to, and you were not doing anything to provoke them out of him.
Which is another implication I went in there with, because I was like, oh yeah, he's being cagey, this is very secretive, I have to be very subtle with this.
Yeah.
And, like, when the answer was drop that part where I just start, like, asking, because I was like, I can't just ask him, because that is the wrong answer. I have to, like, kind of slowly hit this. And no, the right answer is I should have just been like, oh, hey, tell me about this forum you're checking out. Like, I heard about it. But yeah, well, I mean, I'm gonna look at it all, like, differently later. It's because now I'm like, all right, fair enough. That was a thing I could have done better.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, right? Is, again, you had an expectation of what was happening, and there was just a lot of things of, like, okay, I'm saying my character is doing the right things, right? But without actually doing those, and then you were waiting for moments to, like, actually do those against a character who is not going to invite that kind of discourse, I guess, is the best way to put it. And so it's just a lot of, like we've been talking, expectations were not being met in the scene. Alex was anticipating the guy to act or say something in a particular way that the character actually wasn't going to. And so it was hard to engage in the scene in the way that Alex was expecting it to. And that's the hard thing. And right, you can see this whole thing happens towards the end, like the last The stream went way over time, but it was within like between the 3 and 4 hour mark somewhere. You can
Yeah,
see that
it was in the
conversation.
end bit where we were like basically debating and discussing.
Yeah, we were talking about bonds after the 4 hour mark.
Because I have no clue where you landed on. I'm interested in like if you've thought any further on it, because I still think another expansion of character creation that gives for like a social life representation. I think it's still a very fun idea for this type of game.
Yeah, well, so what we did end up landing on is, to be fair, right? How many sessions of the 333 do you think we've had?
I want to say I'm gonna just toss out like, I don't know, 8.
That's honestly less than I would expect. Last session was the 10th session we've had on the 333. Which, when I was talking to Booter, he and I felt it was way more sessions than that. like
Yeah,
12 or more, you know.
I toss 8 because I've missed some, and like I was just adjusting. There's probably times you guys played without me. So like 8 is a safe bet. And also because we've been playing for like 3 months, 3 months.
About 3 months or so.
Yeah, so it's like a rough guess you can make.
Yeah, that's fair. But it felt to us way more than that what it ended up being. But yeah, you guys are you're not that far in the game at all. And so when we were talking about how the bonds work, I remain pretty adamant on the idea that bonds, I think, are a system that shouldn't be forced through the game's standard mechanics. It should be something that players can interact with if they so choose. And the thing is, bonds have a depth to them, because bonds at a surface level are just like another thing that gives you talents, right? They're talents based on whoever you're talking about. But the bonds are actual NPCs in the setting, and you can talk to them and you can do things with them that are not included in how the bond mechanic normally works. And so a really good role player can get way more out of a bonds than a not good one. And so and not only that, but in order to get that, you have to engage with it at that kind of level. And so forcing bonds as a system, as just like a part of character creation, even if it's just like, hey, you can take bonds or you can get a bonus for not taking bonds. The thing is that's the system telling you bonds are a part of the game that you should be thinking about interacting with, when that's not necessarily the intent of the system.
Yeah.
So, like, how it's currently set up is what we've ended at, because, and also it was because we were having the conversation as well that Booter was struggling with the idea that characters who are important in your character's life aren't inherently bonds. Like, you can have a wife who you really love who isn't your personal bond and doesn't give you the benefits of a personal bond, while like a friend you've reconnected to after a few years can give you those benefits. And a lot of this is, and to be fair, it just requires context of a fully written out book that we just don't have yet. But the point of the bond system and how it's generally set up is the characters who are your bonds are the ones who are relevant in your character's story for this story that we're going through. It's not characters who are relevant in your character's actual life. It's characters who are relevant in the narrative that you're telling, the campaign you're telling the story in. So you could have a wife who's not a bond because she's just not relevant in the same way that another character might. And
yeah, which that framing makes more sense and makes it feel a little bit more legitimate.
Yeah.
Because when it's framed in the way like a bond, with like the idea, the wording of it, and like how it's right now in its current phrase, it just been explained. I have the same hurdle where I'm like, it feels weird to me that I can't start out with like certain bonds in this lens, but I also am hitting it with that hurdle of like, yeah, but that opinion needs to be metered through, this is a mechanical thing. Yeah. And if you just allow this all to be free willy-nilly, then you can be like, well, GM, because I wrote my backstory, I have 10 bonds.
Yeah,
I'm starting out with this. Like, that's unreasonable.
Well, right, and exactly. It's also that the how you interpret your relationship with a bond can be different. Like your criminal bond, for instance, you could have a very friendly relationship with them. It's just mechanically speaking, they only provide benefits in a certain way, right? But maybe like you like each other, you joke with each other, you know, but you don't get the same benefits like a personal bond would give. And conversely, like just because you're married to someone, like I think it's pretty obvious in the world we live in, people have different levels of actual relationships with their spouses to some degree. And so
that was my joke answer of like, yeah, it's the most uncharitable joke read I can make, where it's like, yeah, I have to have a loveless marriage until I come across you in the story. Then
right.
I can start to love you.
Which is not the intent.
If not the intent, and mechanically it'd be even worse if it's like, well, yeah, because I'm married GM, I actually get to have a level 3 bond for free at the start of the game. Like, that's unreasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's why the game currently is set up in the way where it is, where, yeah, sure, you're giving up some scale increases to have bonds, but one, bonds are narrative advantages for your character in some way. And two, if you want to have a wife, take the married option during character creation. It's just, it's not whether is my character educated or married or not. It's what is more relevant in your character's actual narrative. Is your wife a big part of your life? Then that's probably the more accurate selection to take over the other one.
And when it's actually written out, that section definitely has to have the very big warnings of like, this, if you could take married and like not be married, it is just a word given to this thing. It is like, this is a framework. Don't take these super literally, because it's just what happens when you're testing a game and we're all like working at it, and at most you have like a word to build off of it, so then you build your own intentions out of said word that aren't intended. Though, I mean, still, I at least posit that this game would be very, very sick to build on the whole self what's the best word for it? It's the fact that you invest yourself into the mechanics you like. I think if character creation just had more steps to it, it would be like, one, I would love to build characters in your game. As it is right now, it's like not a thought, because like just go like this, and like I have a character I've made. Statting it out isn't like a process, like a process I really do.
Well, I'll say specifically in many TTRPGs, what you start off as a level 1 character isn't a lot, and what people technically build off of very typically are higher level versions of characters. So
yeah, and I think a fun version to help with that, I think if character creation is expanded out, adding some steps, but the real intention with that point of it is giving your character a very, very minor foot in the door of something you can like invest in, where you can have a character that starts out, oh yeah, you're a little more invested in this type of crafting. It's not giving you all these benefits, you have to work for it. But for the best part of character creation is nudging a player that a thing exists that they get latched onto.
Yeah, and
that's fair, always like really fun.
To be fair, now it's on to Booter. I'm probably going to start you off with more skill points overall, now that I know generally like how it felt with the compounding and how y'all went through it. But in addition to that, there will be characters who will have access to like the occult stuff or mystic art stuff or alchemy stuff as an option at character creation.
Yeah, it makes sense with the way we do it, because you have to play it a little pulled back so you can test them. You have to test the numbers. You have to have a test that goes like, the numbers are too restrictive, and then as much as you'll have a test where this is too much. This is like way too much to give. Like there's the balance you like have to find, and the best way to find it is through testing. Because like I think the fun of this game and the system is I like the idea and the concept of a TTRPG that is as expansive as you want it to be, and the mechanics that come up are because players directly want it to happen. And things that mechanically express that, even early on, I think are just really fun. Because there's a lot of things you can introduce very slowly. But like the more mechanics you add, it also gives you stuff to add to the game as it goes on, where you can be like, oh yeah, there's this new mechanic for it, and now here's this new slight addition to character creation you can choose from. Look at all these fun options you can pick.
Yeah, and to be fair, a lot of games do that. So, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
definitely open to expanding it more. I do like how quick it was just to get started with it, for sure. And to be fair, it's hard because every skill point you earn gives you a new talent that you have to then choose. And you know how people are with choices.
Yeah. It is that bit of like, in a test game of us just jumping into it, it works really well. For a game that I'd want to play a second time, I like it when character creation takes some time, not like Mutants and Mastermind. That's
Yeah.
too long. That's
Yeah,
too
yeah.
much. But like, I like the games where we can have like a session 0 and half of it is making a character. And you're like chatting with everybody and you're like, oh, I'll make this decision because we can do this. It's like Legend of the Five Rings. I think that game is significantly better in character creation than the actual core game of it is. I think the communal character creation slaps so hard. And that is one of the most fun I've had in an actual character creation session.
Yeah. And to be fair as well, let me say, first of all, I'm totally for expanding the character creation at least a little bit more. I think that's a good idea. I just, some of the things I like about how it was already done, I like how bonds are married to the choices that you can make, because I feel like it increases the value of those bonds because players are obviously choosing those for the bond rather than a skill increase, which is, you know, in a more literal sense, exactly what your character is capable of. But a lot of this as well can be a thing when I've more written out and like fully realized the setting, because then I can tie the setting more into character creation itself, and that's a really good thing to do. So a lot of it is just we're early in the game design process, but for what
is present, this character creation makes the most sense.
Yeah.
And is definitely going to be, I think, the smallest it would be. It's a great framework to work off of, and it also makes sense because a chunk of this shit, like the mechanics, we came up with in and out of game talking about it and like figuring stuff out. So like you couldn't have added any form, not even saying you will, any form of like the whole false persona into character creation because it wasn't a thing yet.
Yeah.
Like that became a thing. So it makes sense. Because yeah, it is the bit where I have my own taste with like character creation and always iterating out what is your intent. Here's like what I would love in your game. I'm not expecting you to turn this game into my favorite game, of course. But it's always like it's always like working with the differing opinions that hashes it out. And gamers, this is how you have a decent argument. This is how you have a good one.
Yeah.
Let me turn the camera real quick. That's how you do it better. What would be a lot worse is if I right out the gate was like, Cam, your character creation is bad and you should feel bad. I want to make a Pathfinder character in your game. That's the very slimmest, worst way of like kind of saying what I want. I want some more steps to character creation, but it's worded in a way that's super hostile.
Well, yeah, it's just like I don't think I could play your game again unless the character creation got bigger. You know, something like that. That seems like a lot worse. Yeah. So you're just not going to play my game anymore just because the character creation is not to your taste.
Yeah, like, yeah, sorry, Cam. Your character creation's bad, so I don't want to play it again. Like, what an awful way to word that. That's not what I feel.
Yeah.
And like at all. That's not how you should word that if you want it to be a productive conversation.
And to comment on Oyman's comment here, arguments are bad about what? No, arguments are not bad. How people argue is what's bad and what we're talking about. Though there's an interesting comment here by Dead Phoenix. IRL charisma shouldn't be a replacement for in-game charisma. That's an interesting statement because I don't think there's a very actually clear answer to that. Because
it's always a balance.
Does that comment mean you should always roll for a narratively important talking moment, or should a character be able to in character persuade someone without rolling dice?
because like I think the part, and I think even the part we land on in like other discussions we've had on it, is like it shouldn't be the case that I, as a player, am gatekept from playing anyone with a charisma modifier because maybe I stumble through my words, I say ums and ahs, I can't think as quickly as someone else.
Right.
Just as equally unfair as it would be if some guy rolls up and he's a smooth talker, he's really like he's just a charismatic human being, rolls up, plays a charismatic character, and now he doesn't have to interface with a part of the game that we do. Like that is equally unfair.
Yeah, like I'm John Fighterman, and I'm just a really well-adjusted, charismatic individual. I dump charisma because why would I put points in charisma? And I'm just a mid-maxed like Adonis here. But I'm so good at talking, I just get away with it anyway. So why would I build a character to actually have charisma stats? Yeah, that doesn't sound good. And from what can I infer from knowing Dead Phoenix for as long as we have, as Dead Phoenix is a long time viewer and member of the Discord and the channel, what I feel like you're actually trying to say is players shouldn't be able to bypass charisma or like speaking based mechanics just because they're good at talking, which I agree with.
Yeah. In the same way I agree with the fact that like if you are, I don't know, like you just, I should not be expected to actually be a locksmith if I'm playing a rogue and I want to like pick locks. I IRL do know a chunk of things about this, and it's honestly because my day job is me fixing and kind of working on things. So I just have like, I'm building a depth of knowledge of like what I know about. That's never going to be the expectation. And also like it should be required for what you're doing. You shouldn't have to learn how this is built so you can role play it.
Yeah, and so like that's a prime example of how a statement you can say or an argument can say cannot directly infer what you actually meant, and thus can be interpreted in somewhat hostile ways, right? Because for instance, Alex and I, we love talking. We love having characters who have very good roleplay narrative moments, all that kind of stuff. We want opportunities to actually talk and convince characters in character to be able to use, you know, the in the moment role play in order to do so in a very organic way. And we absolutely hate it when we do that and then are forced to roll and the dice rolls like garbage.
Yeah, and like we want to do it because it's like, oh, this is a part of the game we want to interface with. I would like for it to work and be successful. It would suck if like I think it would be actually annoying and cringe, and I'd hate it if a GM rolls up and is like, all right, I'm very serious about roleplay. We're going to like roleplay a lot of conversations. And then it turns into like an actual debate, like a realistic debate at the table. Because I think debating is kind of cringe. I don't like it. I think it is a pointless like effort. So I don't want that. I don't want to get debate broed. I know the tactics. I know the things. What if like, I guess if your GM's a Redditor, like that's what would happen. I don't want it to be that far. I want to have the crutch of like, this is a game. My character is way more charismatic in these specific ways. Because like I can have a character with intimidation. I think I'm one of the least intimidating humans on the planet.
Yeah.
I just don't like being mean to people, and I don't think I'm threatening. I also don't get angry very often. It's very rare I get mad. But if I have intimidation, I can lean on the fact that my character is intimidating. I shouldn't have to scare the GM to make successful intimidation checks.
Yeah. And to be fair, right, in that literal, like, all right, we're going to have a role-playing moment, convince me moment, what we had this last session during that whole scene, right, if it was to be viewed in that lens, we would have to sit there, play Guitar Hero or whatever for like 2 hours. So Alex could then systematically, slowly broach a subject.
Slowly pull something out. Because my character, his entire persuasive, charismatic style is he's that guy that's just really likable.
Yeah.
And if he wants information out of you, he knows how to kind of play a conversation to get you talking about something and like you don't realize how the topic was broached. Like one of those kind of people. And that's hard to express IRL because it turns out a lot of those conversations have to be long, over hours. And it would be a little funny if we were fully in character pulling up Clone Hero. That's unironically a bit funny. But like that'd be funny once. So any other time after would be so fucking annoying.
Right. And so like even if you're a charismatic person and you're playing that way, but you don't want to have those long moments, that's what the dice are for, is to kind of help bridge that moment together.
It's an expression of like what's happening in the world. Like dice are a catalyst for things to happen, an expression of what is going on, expression of luck, mechanics, anything. Like that's the point of dice.
Yeah, and so like, and I think that's the thing a lot of people don't think about, right? Is I believe Alex is a fun guy. We chat a lot. We have lots of interesting conversations. I don't even think necessarily that Alex himself couldn't have convinced this character to maybe talk about his fun alchemist stuff. But you know, in the way he wanted to do it, and in the context of the scene, we just couldn't have that conversation in the way that we wanted to, you know. No. And that's
I'd get that forum so well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
In the course of 5 hours, I could probably.
So, you know, like that's the thing, right? But I can't just be like, you know what? I believe that you would say that. Here, you convinced the man. Like, we should just roll the dice. That's just how it should be. I think if you're having an in moment in an actual conversation, you're actually talking to the character, I believe dice are not necessary. But there's a lot of situations where it's not realistic to actually have the conversation because it's long, it will require a lot of things. Maybe you're playing online and half of what your character is doing is like facial emotions, you know, like I raise my eyebrow in a very seductive way kind of thing, right? But like if I can't see your face, then I don't know if I can really infer that, and nor can I believe that your character can do it as well as you can as well. So if you find yourself in a moment having to take shortcuts in a conversation because it's a game, then the game needs to be representative of that moment. But if you're having an actual conversation, actually getting emotional, having a chat, the dice are not necessary unless you want to create tension with it, which I think is absolutely fair to do, you know. Sometimes you don't know how someone might react in that situation. Maybe the GM doesn't know how that character might react in that situation. And so that's the most fair thing, but also it creates tension in the moment. It's dynamic and it's complicated, more complicated than I think a casual enjoyer of tabletop really realizes. And that's how I said towards the beginning of this whole chat, right? This whole thing is not simple. The more you dig into it, the more complex of a beast it actually is. And so you can't really judge people by preferring to do one part of this equation versus another, because to expect someone to have such a big depth and proficiency in role-playing in general is just not realistic. And thus, you have to come to an agreement based on the experience that is expected of a tabletop experience, which when you kind of boil it down to is this is a game where when stuff are important, we roll dice, and the outcome of the dice is how the story goes. That's the whole point of a tabletop RPG. You know, you can be inventive, you can get bonuses. The GM can always say, yes, you can get a bonus. No, you don't get a bonus. Even if the rules say contrary, the GM can say you don't need to roll. You convince the character just fine. But the expectation is that it doesn't matter necessarily how you think a thing should go. You have to understand that you are playing a game as much as you are having a narrative experience, and your GM should be open to the idea of you being creative, but your creativity should earn the thing you're trying to get. The whole, and I saw someone, Black Skull, mention, it you realistically throwing a fireball into an alchemist shop would have consequences. Yes,
100%.
I would agree, but one, how do you know how magical, alchemical, or even non-magical, but like alchemical items using beast blood or whatever work, like in a way? How do you know those explosions would be less consequential than the overall fireball itself would be? Like, there's just a lot of that part that could be argued and doesn't need to be argued, right? You have to understand that, like, the GM is having a scene that's interesting and descriptive, and just because you think a fireball should work in that way doesn't mean, even if you're right, doesn't mean it should work in that way in this scenario, because it's been proven time and time and time and time again, players will min-max the fun out of a game. And it's also true in roleplay. Players will min-max their role-playing the fun out of a game. Players will do whatever they can to produce infinite gold, to steal infinite items from characters, or whatever. So there needs to be guardrails in those situations. And honestly, 9 times out of 10 anyway, things actually don't work the way a player thinks it does regardless. Because
even aside from the idea of, like, would it actually work? Because realistically, there's that chance, like, yeah, sure, there might be something volatile, but also, like, there's a lot of liquids that are super inflammable. And the fact that something is touching like a liquid means it's way less likely to do anything that you'd want to be done. If we take it from hey, this is a game we're playing and you're asking me to make this thing about a rule, do you want Fireball to affect everything in the environment for everything going forward?
yeah.
Like, I think the game would be significantly worse if the precedent going forward is if you use Fireball, it's going to act like a fireball. Because, hey, don't use that indoors. Don't use that in any location where there's wood. The game would be worse off because that's more things to track and that's more annoyances popping up.
Yeah,
So
your
like,
alchemist who wears all their your alchemist who wears all those alchemical items on their bandolier. Oof, that fireball just fucked your alchemist pretty hard. you know, like, obviously you don't want that. It's not bad to throw that out there.
It depends on, like, what you're asking for, because, like, the real question, like, the real thing, the answer you want is, like, what I said earlier of, you just want a, like, you win button right now. That is what you want out of this. You want a slight resource expenditure for an insta-kill. When, like, a different way of asking a question is like, oh, hey, I have this fire spell. We're not making the precedent of, like, oh yeah, all fire spells will now have the real property of an exploding fire bolt or ball. But, like, hey, GM, I have this, like, slight idea. Could I maybe use Firebolt to ignite this thing and do this effect? Like, you are asking for a specific thing that was like, oh, okay, that could work. We can do it this way. We can do this way. Like, that makes more sense.
Like, are you putting in the footwork to make your idea actually creative and interesting? That's the thing that you should be asking yourself every time you're trying to have a creative idea, right? How much are you putting in, and is it worth what you're getting out of it? If it's not rocket science to say fireball in a science lab, ooh, that's not in creative. That's not ingenious. Anyone could really think about that.
Yeah.
But if you're having a battle in, like, a ballroom and you're like,
I do like the you use Fireball, this +3 striking sword is now broken and the runes have been ruined.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, you're sorry, man, your leather chest plate is now on fire.
Yeah, you're now on fire. Congratulations.
Yeah. Sorry, you shouldn't have worn mage robes. What are you doing, dog?
Yeah, your plate armor, yeah, it's been superheated by the fireball. You are in constant agony and pain, and your armor is now fusing to your skin. Yeah, you're kind of fucked.
Yeah, you're fucked. Sorry, because we're now using the real properties of fire, if it gets too much, we're now just giving free heat metals around.
Yeah.
Like, sick.
it's there's a lot of this that, and players in GMs, this happens on both sides. This is not just a player situation. There's tons of times GMs are also equally bad. What if your player does come up with, like, again, we had this conversation. Player has a really good conversation with an NPC. They said all the right things. The GM is sitting there half in tears and then says, make a roll. And then you roll a nat 1 and you're just like, yeah, all that you just said now was actually just incoherent babble, and everyone is looking at you like an idiot. Like,
yeah, it's a tricky precedent. I just think the right answer more often than not in a lot of these situations is when somebody's like, hey, this is what I want to do, and you have that moment of like, I don't know if this would actually work like this. I don't know if I can give you this. I think a lot of times you have to make that conscious idea in your head to step back and be like, hey, man, this is what you're asking me to do. Like, this is what it's going to be mechanically speaking. I cannot accept it in this form for these reasons. Mechanically, all the shit we've been joking about with Fireball. This is why I cannot have that happen. However, if your idea is to do this, there's some routes we can use. We can keep that thread. It just will not happen in the exact way you're thinking of right now. I think that is a more productive conversation.
Yeah, and to be fair,
like, if it's approached right, people will be like, oh, okay, yeah, fair enough. Because if you ever hit me with that, largely because of TableTalk, I look at a lot of game design a lot harder, and I have a lot of moments where I'm like, okay, logically speaking, the game has to operate like this, but homie rules, what if?
Yeah,
like that's that's a different conversation you can have.
And to be fair, right, and this is the reason why I'm not addressing probably the largest part of this whole conversation, which is just people's actual competency when it comes to communication. Because, right, I'm an experienced GM. I've been playing hardcore tabletop for over 20 years at this point. Like, near weekly games with a few breaks, obviously, around that time. Of my friend group, most of the players that I regularly play with, even now, barely have maybe a quarter of the amount of experience I do. And I also am an individual who speaks rather eloquently and is very, like, invested in proper communication skills and works very hard to have good communication skills, but also to foster trust in my friends and to, like, have genuine conversations and everything. Like, everything I do is at a level that I'm not expecting anyone else to have, right? So this conversation that we've been having is just consider what you're getting out of this, consider the actual ramifications of what you're saying, and also try your best to work with the other person, because most of the times the player's like, hey, can I do this really cool thing? And their GM is just kind of a dick about it, or says something kind of like how Dead Phoenix did earlier that implied something that was not their intent, right? They're like, IRL charisma shouldn't be a replacement for in-game charisma. That's not, word for word is not what you meant. What it was is players should not be able to ignore charisma-based mechanics just because they're good at talking, which is a very different thing to say than just completely nixing people's ability to talk, like, at all. A player should be able to have, like, an actual conversation with an NPC in-game. Now, if you're, like, a role-playing purist and you're trying to judge your players' skills based on their NPC skills, like, how would you actually judge someone's charisma if they're a charisma of a +3 modifier versus a +2 modifier, right? Like,
yeah. And, like, even aside from how what is your metric? Why are you the arbiter of IRL charisma? It's also just a shitty thing to do. It's just, you're being a dick to your friend. Like, if you're doing that to them, like, oh, sorry, you're not as eloquent as your character's stats show. Yeah. Therefore, you fail the check.
Yeah. I was very convinced by what you just said, but I'm seeing here that your character is just a little less charismatic than you, so we're going to roll the dice just to make it fair. like, I rate you as a +3, but your character's a +2. So I'm just gonna ignore your conversation and we're gonna roll the dice.
I would be so immediately insulted if I got slapped by that, purely of like, don't fucking grade me. What is this, school?
Yeah, right.
Like, don't talk to me like that. Speak to me like a human being. I would get very, very mad in the moment. It's always the balance of it, you know?
Yeah, but we're not saying, you know, players can out talk the game mechanics. It's especially because, again, like we had the conversation earlier, I believe Alex is a rather charismatic guy, can talk very well, but, you know, we weren't going to have a 2-hour conversation on a couch playing Clone Hero. So we kind of just have to let the game take the wheel in that scenario and actually play it out because, you know, we can't infer everything that was said or done or exactly how it was said or done in a big time skip in that way. And so that's just kind of how it has to be, you know?
Yeah.
Because like it's something that even I'm guilty of. I remember a situation where I was trying to be intimidating and I was saying a bunch of things and I was like describing how my character was doing, right? But just because I was describing it in that way or the things I was saying wasn't probably actually making me pretty intimidating in that moment. I don't feel like anyone in the table was feeling pretty intimidated because, well, one, I wasn't trying to intimidate them specifically, but an NPC rather. And I'm not going to necessarily talk in a super intimidating way to my GM to try to make that more real in the moment. You know, sometimes maybe,
hey,
but
GM,
not like every time.
Hey GM, I'm sorry. Thanks for letting me join the game. I'm actually kind of a roleplay purist. So like I will talk to you a lot. It's like, oh yeah, hell yeah. And then you just slam your fist on the table and you're threatening bodily harm to another person.
Yeah, I'm gonna make
like,
you feel real uncomfortable right now.
That would be a little bit of a funny sketch. Like
to be fair, I've done that before to a player. The player was talking to like some rude fish merchant guy to get at like a thief who hid in his stuff, and I was like actually yelling at this guy, and he was like an early role player and just looked at me with these wide eyes. It was just like I was sitting there just content with myself. I was like, yeah, I've role played that really well, not really realizing in the moment that I was probably just making this guy feel very uncomfortable playing a game.
Yeah, that's that's not something a lot of people respond to positively, but that's a funny image. Just like the sit back proud, like hell yeah, I'm a great actor. It's like, I mean, you did IRL yell at a guy, so
yeah,
technically yes.
I'm being super honest. I legit, like, I was just cursing at this guy. I was talking in an accent. Like, I felt like I did really well in that scene role playing this kind of character. And then I sat back and I'm like, how do you like that role play? Like, that's probably nothing you've ever seen or heard before. Yeah, that was really good. Because it's like, in part, I'm right? That was really good role play, but that was maybe not the right moment.
Like,
or the right person.
Like, objectively, like, you know, it is pretty good role play to like be that in character. On the other hand, in that moment, it'd be like, don't speak to me like that. Like, what? Stop yelling at me, dog. Calm down. Like, yeah. We're getting dangerously close to riffing to the Key and Peele D&D sketch, which is a great sketch. It's that idea of like, all right, let's take somebody who is really not aligned at all with the nerdy topics, like full on like gangster rap, like that full vibe. And then it slowly pivots into like, now the game, instead of fighting a giant, it's now going to the tavern and getting bitches. But it turns out this guy is actually just a really good player and like is really engaged with the game world and eventually takes over the game and becomes the GM.
Yeah,
and that's a great sketch. It's really you gotta love old like early TV that actually shows D&D as a funny thing.
Yeah, and
like a positive, cool light, because it's never making fun of D&D. It's making fun of like the weird scenarios that can come out of D&D.
Yeah,
this would be funny. This would be funny to write out a lot of sketches like this.
Yeah,
because I put a gun on the table.
Don't worry about that.
We're playing a modern setting. GM, I have to method act.
Yeah. So, you know, it's And as well, I know some people miss as well. We also talked about like people's views on classes and everything like that. Like a lot of discourse in the tabletop scene, whether it's in a game or about a game, are usually always missing the point and are from people who are not able to properly word exactly what they're looking for, and thus they're being contended by people who are also not great at being like eloquent and elocuting their points, and thus it can feel like an impasse. It can feel like nothing gets done because, you know, like again, the earlier conversation, I keep using this as an example. I don't think IRL Christmas should replace roleplay. I could have very easily have said, I think players should be able to have conversations with NPCs in game. And you can see how there's no like actual crossover in those two statements.
When in reality, like the statements are like quick, easy to like understand statements that honestly like breaking down into like full nuance, which is just, this is what the internet kind of does in communication, where it's like in reality there's the real sense of nuance that is like in the middle, but there's just the ways we word things that are that can come across as very declarative. Like actually, here's an example that came up with me recently, ish. So there's a big thing with grimdark games online and how they're talked about with the idea of there are no good guys, or like that everyone is a bad guy. I was straight up discussing this with some people, and the problem is like there's a lot of these arguments. It's people straight up talking in bad faith,
right?
And it happened with Trench Crusade, where Trench Crusade's intention. That is a hard thing to do online, Dead Phoenix. I get you. Trust me. I'm in that same boat. So like in Trench Crusade, the concept is really there are no good guys. And like the statement, there are no good guys, I think means something very different to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because when I hear there are no good guys, I think of, okay, yeah, there's no like Paragon faction. There's not a faction or group that are like Superman. Everybody is in some lens an anti-hero. When other people hear that, they hear, oh, so like this faction is equally as bad as this faction. It's like, no, that's not what you mean. And a lot of the discussions, like the one I had where I really was narrowing down, like, what are you trying to say? This is what I'm saying. Like the point someone was making is in Trench Crusade, the two sides really is the side of heaven and hell. And there's like, yeah, hell is like the bad guy. It's like, yeah, 100%. They are worse. And then therefore, because they're the worst option, the side of heaven is the good guys. So the statement, there are no good guys, that's not true. And I don't like it for these reasons. It's like, okay, we're trying to say something similar, but we have different ideas of what each other's statements mean. And like, that is very common.
Well, I've seen this with Warhammer too. When
all the time,
when like a Paragon character is brought into the story, someone who is genuinely trying to be a good person, you know, despite living in the Warhammer universe, because Warhammer is the same thing, right? Where there are no good guys in Warhammer.
There are better options, but like there's no good guy.
Yeah, like the Imperium of Man treats their people like garbage, you know, but there are good people in the stories of Warhammer. Not every one of them is just an asshole. There are some who are honorable people who do their best and don't do anything shitty and actually hate the shitty things. But there's a lot of people who see these characters and they're like, this isn't Warhammer. This character doesn't belong in the setting. The setting is supposed to be full of assholes.
Thankfully, like the game, like the actual books, I think treat it really well. Yeah. Where there's a lot of degrees of it, because like the Ultramarines are the best example of I think what you would say are pretty, like the characters inside of Ultramarine books that we're following, a lot of times they're good people. They're like good people inside of a system where like, yeah, sure, their version of good is different than ours, where like they're like, yeah, of course I'm gonna like nuke this world into oblivion. Yeah, we're getting a lot of survivors in it, like a lot of innocent people are dying, but it's the good decision to make. And to them, that's like a perfectly good answer to something, where to us it'd be like, okay, wait, hold up. There's a lot of scenarios like that, and it's always the shades of it. But then when you try to discuss it, it's a lot of times those declarative bits, because I'm not erasing the fact that there's good Ultramarine characters when I say on the front, Ultramarines are not good guys. Uh, and like that's the bit I actually am super appreciative that Rogue Trader hits really hard as a video game. Where in that game you can be a paragon, you can be a very good person. It is an uphill battle the entire time to be a good person. In Warhammer, you are being a good person in spite of the system you are a part of. And that's, I think, a significantly cooler story, which also hits when it comes to these discussions about good guy, bad guy, because some people are coming at it in the idea of like, well, I'm saying a true fact. These are bad, these guys, therefore these are the good guys. And then when I hear it, my answer to it is like, you're asking for a more boring thing. Because it sounds like you're asking and saying that Warhammer has like Paragon characters. And like Trench Crusade, there's like a Paragon faction. I think having that in a grimdark setting, I think that kind of is a weak storytelling system to replace what we currently have. It is a weaker option in a world where the point of the universe is everybody is like bad in some way, and there is actually no good answer to the questions you're facing.
Well, yeah.
And you have to pick which one's worse and like which one's less bad for you is a lot of times the decision characters make. Yeah. And then being like, well, yeah, then this faction is like Superman. It's not what someone's arguing, but it can sound like that based on like what they write on Twitter.
Yeah. And like, this is the kind of arguments I find myself in a lot, because I would say I'm a moderate when it comes to a lot of like TTRPG positions, because I'm someone who enjoys the narrative in equal amount as I do mechanics. I love a good crunchy game, but I love a good crunchy game that has a lot of narrative like bulk to it as well. And this puts me in a very middle position compared to a lot of people, where it's like when we'll argue about like, is this class good or not? And they're like, yeah, but see, this class here, if you do this, this, and this, averages this not necessarily insignificant, but like not great amount of extra damage per round. So it's just arguably a better class. And I'm like, why? Why is a little bit more damage per round in a game where you could play the other worse option and still do the thing better? You know? And some people will take that argument as optimizing is bad. And I've had to state multiple times, optimizing is not bad. Enforcing optimization is bad.
If you are forced to do it, that's when it sucks. Like, because that's my critique of Pathfinder First Edition. Is there? I also like, for example, I love Anima Beyond Fantasy. That's a really fun game. The game one of its big flaws is that you have to be very good at the system to operate it. Like you cannot, you can stumble your way really easily into making a useless character.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. I love my games to give me the chance to make something very, very good, because it's one of the few ways you can like express competency in a tabletop game. Because it's not easy to do that in the same way you could like a video game. Yeah. And it is fun to be like, I'm good at this system. Check out the cool thing I do.
Yeah.
That's what happens a lot in Pathfinder discussions, because it's like what we talked about before. It's like so boring to be like, oh, check out the cool roleplay character I made, instead of like, check out the cool math I did.
Yeah.
Like those are two different conversations, and one of them's more interesting.
Yeah. And I would agree. But you know, you can enjoy a class that's not the optimal class, and that doesn't make it a bad class.
Exactly.
A class being more optimal than another. And to be fair, in many of these situations as well, the class isn't actually optimal. It's only optimal in combat. And that's a thing that is so hard to get around some people's minds, because they're just like, well, but if I do the combat well, my character doesn't die and I can have more role play. You know what? Sometimes your character dying is some of the coolest things that can happen to your character.
Yeah.
So that's not even a good excuse.
It is it is just a shame that like it is so annoying and boring to quantify how cool your character is in a role play scenario, because you can directly picture, and when you're making a build and doing all this, you can picture the fights and like how everything's gonna work. But like you can't roll up to Reddit and be like, hey guys, check out the cool build I made. I can have so many cool conversations like this. It's just not interesting because you can't, like, it's not repeatable is the problem with
well, no, you know what's even worse, right? Is when you're like, hey guys, I have this really cool investigator build, and then everyone's just like, why don't you just play rogue? You get better backstab. And it's like, yeah, but I like the investigator feats. I like what the investigator can do outside of combat. I don't need to do high backstab damage. That's not the point of the character. I like this character because he's kind of good in combat, not because he's great in combat.
It is my least favorite point when it comes to like, well, you could have just picked this and done it this way and it'd be better. Well, if my grandma had wheels, she'd be a bike. Let's talk about this in the way that I've built it, because what you're saying is pointless.
Yeah,
it's I want to like snap at Redditors more often.
Trust me.
I gotta like I'm never gonna use Reddit as a platform, but if I did, I'd be very mean on the Pathfinder sub if someone came at me.
Yeah. I mean, like, and that's the thing, like, even on this very stream, we've had conversations with people that were just boiled down to me saying, you don't have to be optimal to have a good character to play the game really well. And they're like, yeah, but why would I play something that does less or does this worse or whatever? And it's like,
it is the thing of internet communication makes what we're saying worse, because it's just like, if you want to like talk on the internet, everything is incentivizing you to shorten what you're trying to say, and by shortening out what you're trying to say, a lot of times it's just going to come across slightly different to a person, and like different in implication, where someone can be like, okay, one person can be like, oh, I know what you mean, like, I know this is what you actually mean and this is how you're phrasing it. Another person will take it as he phrased it, and when it comes to like a in-person conversation, it'll be a lot different.
Well, I'm not even saying that much. The thing is, right? Even if right, like I said on this stream, I'm talking. I'm actually able to allocate and to look at their response and to properly talk about it. But the problem that arises typically is not that we weren't, able to say exactly what we were trying to say. It's that what your aim in what makes a good character or not is just different, because very typically people are looking at what their character is capable of doing on the sheet versus what they're capable of doing in actual practice, right?
Yeah.
And what will happen is, like I said, fighter on the sheet, really good, it can have decent skills, can be given the ability to gain decent skills, so how is it a bad class? And it's just like, well, because the very fact that my familiar exists in my character's narrative makes my character inherently more interesting at base as a class feature than as a fighter would, because there's a reason why my familiar is here. It doesn't matter that the fighter doesn't, like, the familiar adds nothing to a witch that makes it better than fighter in any way. That's on paper, that's not the point. What the point is just the very fact that a familiar exists offers more roleplay options, more situations where the character can have some unique interactions, and overall just makes the character more interesting than just a fighter does, Yeah. And the witch can still curse people to death, maybe not as quickly as a fighter, but in a way that's not so different that it's dramatic. Some games that is the case. In some games that's definitely something that's worth arguing about. But like in Pathfinder specifically, it's just not, So what people are saying is just like, it takes a witch 3 times as long to kill a guy than a fighter does. And it's just like, yeah, but it takes a fighter twice as long to kill 5 people as it does a witch because of area spells and stuff like that. And a witch's overall round like DPR is just higher based on the number of fighters.
Anybody who says that wizard is a bad DPS class doesn't know what they're talking about.
Exactly. But, and you know how often I see that all of the time? Often. That wizards are bad in combat, and it's just like, no, you just don't understand how the game works.
Yeah, you're looking at it different. It's Pathfinder, you can be like, this class is better than the other. And you can say that in like two different ways of like, this class is worse at role play concept built into the class, like, or this class is worse on paper with like what you're trying to do compared to something else that can do something similar. But it never like implies that the class itself is bad, because it is just the nice part of Pathfinder that all the classes are just good.
Yeah.
There's not a bad decision you can make at character creation. Arguably, like, your thing will function. Is there a way to make it function better? And like, maybe you have an idea, you didn't execute it as well, and you find out that there's a better way you could have done your idea. Probably, but it depends what you want out of it. Did you want to go into it with the best way to do such and such action in like style, or did you go into it wanting to play a class that can do that thing? And that's it. You just want to do that thing as this class.
Yeah, well, and it can also be like narrative theming. You know, your character could have like an archetype, a class archetype that doesn't really work for your build, but you use it in a very interesting way that makes your character overall way more interesting and have a much more interesting story. And that's the thing, right? Is I have never judged my enjoyment in a tabletop game based on how well I've done in combat. Not once, not ever. And honestly, when you hear about the stories most people talk about, they don't do it either. You know, they talk about the weird, funny moments where they did something very interesting, or how a story event appeared around their character based on some of their roleplay stuff. It's very rarely based on just how much. There are people, don't get me wrong, there are people out there
I've been in that boat
who talked about how much DPR their character puts out and how awesome it is. I've heard that plenty of times too. But
and I've been in the boat where I stopped playing a class because it wasn't fun in combat.
Yeah,
Magus, like, because explicitly, like, I went in wanting to do a thing, and then it didn't happen. Like, it didn't work that way, and it didn't hit that way. So I was like, this character can be as interesting as possible. Like, this character could be an absolute like cool ass dude, cool character. It might sway my opinion on how long it takes to like switch, but like, the problem when I face it is like, if I'm not having fun in combat, then like, why am I playing this? Because this isn't fun. I'm not having fun with this. Therefore, why would I have my fun suboptimal? Is like the thought process I put in.
Yeah, but what you're
and like I can hit.
Let me iterate here. So what you're saying was it was the way the class was played, not that the class was less like number efficient.
Yeah, like the class, I thought Magus was like, it's very cool on paper, but when it actually comes to how its actions go, it's fucking boring. And playing the class was boring, and it's not fun repeatedly to have your thing just not work. Because the amount of like misspell strikes that happens just a lot. I don't like how the action economy works for Magus. There's a lot of things playing into it. And it doesn't matter how interesting that character was, to an extent. It was always going to be, I switch off of that character because for a portion of the gameplay, it is not fun.
Yeah.
It is more, I would rather have a character that is also interesting and fun to play. Like, I can have both. I'm not going to limit myself from both. There's nothing stopping me. So that's the decision you can make in that moment.
Yeah.
I think that's inherently different than like, oh, hey, GM, can I start over? I found a way to get a +2 slightly more damage in this scenario. I think it's like a different point. But like, sometimes it can just gameplay can impact it.
Yeah. But that's gameplay in like a mechanical feel rather than statistical benefit.
Yeah, there wasn't a way I could build my Magus better to make me like it. It was just the fact that I don't like Magus.
Yeah,
and it's also where I'll get like, Fighter understandably looks very boring to play. Like, I always understand that opinion as someone who, honestly, more and more as I like built characters, Fighter was just becoming one of my favorite go-to classes. Yeah, and it's because like, it's how you go out to build your character that's important. When I went out and making a character was like, I explicitly am making this build because I want this character to be the best at this thing. I want them to do this thing the best they can, compared to if I was making a character that is an interesting character with that I then build off of. Like I stat out. I would not go with Fighter 9 times out of 10. Probably 99 times out of 100. I wouldn't go with Fighter But if I'm trying to do something very cool and fighter's the best at it, I'll have a lot of fun with that version of fighter.
Well, you know, it's funny. So I like mechanical feel for a class. Like, I played Among for a long time. I also didn't like it that much because I felt like it could have done better if there just wasn't the option of the spell strike to be there. Like, I understand, like, it's a free will thing, right? I could have just not spell striked and played Magus, sure.
You control the buttons you press, but the button's right there.
But it felt hard for me to not spell strike when it was just objectively better at doing the thing I wanted to in the moment. I wanted to hit people with spells, right? That's what I wanted to do. I could have done that in more janky ways, sure, but the spell strike was just better at it and did it the way I would have wanted to better, even though the class didn't feel fun to play. Like, I had some crazy damage numbers. Magus is a really good class. We're not saying Magus is a bad class. We just don't like how it like runs mechanically. But it's a good class. It does good damage. But I never choose a class or like look at a class typically based on just like, I don't like the idea of fighter, so I don't play fighter or whatever. Like, if I get an idea for a cool story for a character, I can make almost any class kind of work and find the fun in the mechanics there. But I'll say, the reason why I legitimately love fighter for a lot of interesting character ideas is the +2 fighter gets for their weapon of choice allows me to put some of their stats in other places. So sure, I'm not making the most use of that +2, but that +2 allows me to have like my strength or dex a little less, to have my charisma or intelligence or wisdom a little higher. Like, imagine you're playing a zealot crusader type character, but you're not a champion. You're just someone who's just very religiously inclined, you know, and everything like that. And if you wanted to multi-class archetype or even take some of the really fun, like, divine subclasses out there, you know, you can, and because of your fighter +2, you can still swing your sword pretty good, even though you're not as strong or as dexterous as another fighter might be. And so I could put those points into like wisdom and then multi-class archetype into cleric later on in the story or something like that. Like, that fighter +2 is actually really fun in my opinion because it allows me to be more fun with my stats.
Yeah, and like that is like the reason I like fighter as a class so much, is like that level of freedom the class gives you. But I'm also logically saying some of the fun of fighter is the fact that you can not be as opted into a class, and I can do other things. So is that really a strength of the class?
No,
I think you could argue to an extent, yeah, that like a strength of the class is how open some of the mechanics feel for you. However, is fighter a more interesting class? No, not the slightest. I think it is an objectively boring class that can do a lot of cool things if you have the idea for it. Like, but you have to like know what you want to do.
I wouldn't say it's an objectively boring class. I think the idea of being like a samurai, for instance, who's just insanely good with a katana, doesn't wear lots of armor, just uses a lot of like the weapon skills for like defense and has a parry weapon and stuff like that, is really cool and very interesting mechanically and interestingly. So I wouldn't say objectively it's boring.
It's harder for me to I guess quantify it in that lens of like because like, yeah, the samurai idea, like, all right, the samurai character, very cool, very fun, but like the samurai part is cool, the fighter part isn't. When you compare it to like just, I think the best example, Exemplar is a very interesting class, like with what it's giving you, and maybe the better wording is compared to the other options. Like, fighter is boring.
No,
because there's just so many fun things you can do with these other classes, and they give you like fun story potential on top of it.
I guess, sure. I'll say it's not objectively boring. I think a character idea based around just being insanely good with a weapon is good. And I think
you can make a dope character out of it.
It can be very interesting. And there are a lot of fighting-based mechanics that you can make a part of your story as well to add on to that. Like I said, having, you know, using the many variety of fighter talents to show different sword styles and stuff like that. That's all really cool and very, very interesting. That's interesting because I'm putting the idea onto it, and that's the thing that fighter does. But that's, to be fair, that's like the only thing fighter does, is I'm really cool with this weapon, let me express it through a class. That's exactly what fighter is, and that's completely okay. That's completely fine. I don't think that's objectively boring, but it's okay that on an individual scale, that's just not something you're interested in, or at least not interested in right now.
It is that thing of like, I think of it, it's boring, but it's boring but fun, because like you can do a lot with it. But I think if I was opening up a book for the first time and I'm like, what's gonna draw me into Pathfinder? Fighter isn't the thing. Fighter isn't what's pulling me into the game.
Yeah.
It is drawing my eye, and I think is really mechanically interesting. Fighter can be something I land on, but it is why I'm like never. I always understand, as a big fan of this class, when somebody says, I don't like fighter, I'm not going to play it. It's like, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I agree with why you don't think it is. I like it for these different reasons. And like, maybe I'll get hit with, even in like other scenarios, like, oh, you could have done this thing better if you just played this. But it's not how I wanted to do it. And I found a fun way. I found a fun way to do the thing I wanted. It's like the build I'm very, very proud of. I'm going to play it one day because I think it's just going to be so dope. My wizard that is acting like a Magus because it is a spell sword wizard.
Yeah.
I have no levels of fighter, no levels of Magus. It is a full wizard that I've statted, and using archetypes and everything, I have made him physical combat viable. And it's like really interesting. The spell casting, it's also the challenge of like the only spells I can take are single action or reaction spells. Nothing else. Because I have to be like fighting with a sword.
Yeah.
I can't be like casting fireball and shit. And it turns out there's a lot of really cool reaction spells in Pathfinder. There's a lot of cool ones I wouldn't have taken otherwise. And yeah, there's better ways to build what I have built, but it's the way I built it and it looks fun.
Yeah.
Like that's what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, and you know, like I said, the whole conversation is so complicated, and like in a game like Pathfinder, where mechanically speaking, there's no significant differences between like a really good character and an okay character. Like statistically speaking, we're talking about a few numbers off. Like, yeah, there's definitely games, you know, like Anima, you can make a bad character. You can make a character who just can't do anything, actually. No matter how interesting your idea is, you're never able to actually do those things. And there's a lot of other games that are kind of like that. And a lot of that depends on the game itself. Like Pathfinder First Edition, I think, is a really good game, but you can make bad characters in it. And the system kind of expects a level of build competency, or it gets very difficult for you to run your character.
It's a part that at first gate kept me a bit from fully enjoying Wrath of the Righteous till I learned it.
Yeah.
Because like I made like 4 Wrath of the Righteous characters before I landed on what I actually played with, because every single time it was just bad.
Yeah.
Like, it just didn't do what I wanted. It was just operating super poorly. I wanted to play like essentially that like Inquisitor style guy, that character who's like really in your face, has a bit of mystical like knowledge, because he's out here to hunt demons. That's the concept of the game. Like he's here to hunt demons. And then every route I found did it very poorly, until I understood the game enough that I could make an Inquisitor build that did exactly what I wanted to. But it took a lot of doing, because Pathfinder it's just, even in a video game, it's still, I think, really easy to make a bad character.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I'll stack on top of all this as well, and this will be the last point before we have to end because we're going over.
Yeah. We gotta get running soonish. As
well, there are completely viable builds that you think are bad because you think they play poorly, or they are play in a very boring way, and you just have certain requirements. Like for me, for instance, I love Alchemist because it's a class that forces me to engage in my character a lot more than a lot of other classes do. That doesn't mean that like other things, like I played my Archivist's Thaumaturge, and that's a really fun and interesting build, and it's actually pretty cool. But I made a character, like narratively speaking, that was more boring to play, and the game in the the builds mechanic wasn't drawing me in enough to keep it on, I swapped to an alchemist. Boom, I had infinitely more fun, even though I'm not necessarily any more capable than the other character was. And part of that was the role-playing element as well, but part of it as well is just, honestly, alchemist is just a class that I'm going to have fun in because it's a class that engages me that in a way that other classes don't. And that doesn't make other classes bad. It just means that I have a specific preference and honestly like a certain level of ADHD or ADD that requires the game to like engage me in a way that if I play a more simple class, I'm just not going to have more fun with, despite how good the build is.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah, that's gonna be it for us. I think this was an overall interesting conversation. I think that there's, I mean, to be fair, you can not pedantically, but you could boil this conversation down to a point of people are bad at arguing, and so people are just going to argue. And sure, I guess. But I think it's interesting to look at why these arguments happen and the fact that these arguments most of the time happen because not because people are disagreeing, but because they're approaching it from two very different ways. And also, if someone watches this stream and kind of gets a better grasp of how to approach these situations in the future, I think that's a good thing to come out of it.
Yeah, the big one I will always shout on the rooftops. Have your discussions out of game. If it is like if it comes to a drawn out rule dispute, take it out of the game world. Talk about it at the table as human beings. It is a thing that's a little tough to do in the moment, like just to realize you're doing it, pull yourself out, or even confrontation's a little scary, understandable. But you will find way more productive conversations if you stop trying to solve every situation, argument, discussion inside the game. A lot of times you need to be very upfront, communicate what you're trying to get out of a situation. And as a GM, it does a world of wonders if you can just look at your player and be like, I'm going to explain to you like why I can't say yes to that. But let's find a way to do this. Like that's just a productive method of doing it. Same as player. You should do that also to your GM.
Yeah, exactly. Because honestly, again, like we're using a lot of player things because honestly, players are the ones who do things in the game and GMs arbitrate.
The GM is the one that says no. So
yeah.
That's where discussions start, is when you're told no.
Yeah. But GMs are just as bad at this as the players are a lot of the time. There's a lot of scenarios I've heard where it's just the GM didn't properly gauge the situation and what was trying to be gained out of it and approached it in a very poor fashion. So, yeah. And this is also another thing as well. You could be doing everything right and they could be doing something wrong, and then you still come to the same stopgap. Both people have to kind of be doing it right to some degree to make it work.
Everyone needs to come at it from the idea of, like, we're here to have fun as friends.
Yeah.
We need to support the fact that we're all here as friends. No one's trying to own the other. It's a thing when you're approaching situations from like a very earnest like a mindset and situation, you're just more likely to make a lot of these better decisions.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, that's gonna be it for us. Alex, you want to leave us anything before we head out?
Yeah, I got a video coming out soon-ish. I have altered my video schedule. I'm going to stick to this idea of instead of once a week. I work is bad with this. Every 10 days, I want to release a video every 10 days, and I think that'll make just videos actually happen on time. But I got a video coming up on a remake of an old video on Sanguinius, because the old video I made is old shit, and also I didn't have a camera, so I had to film it differently, and it sucks worse. So I made a much better video and a much funnier video on Sanguinius. It's gonna come out next Tuesday morning.
As for me, I'm working on projects in the background. None I can talk about at this time, but in a couple weeks, you're probably going to start seeing some things. And as well, and this is not NDA necessarily, I've put in to review Starfinder, Core, and Battlecry, which are both coming out relatively towards the end of this month. And so typically
I am so excited.
I receive those like a couple weeks in advance, and then I can start making content pretty much like right away as soon as I receive those. So in like a week, maybe more, maybe less, who knows, we'll be seeing some Pathfinder or Starfinder related content again on the channel. Woo! Yay! It's gonna be slow. It's not gonna be fast. It's gonna be slow. I can't make edit. I also need to see the tactician. I have a baby still, obviously, and that's still going to make things a little bit slower than if I wasn't so obligated before. But I'm going to do my best to try to provide, as much content as I can provide at a decent quality. I also don't know what I'm going to do because the green screen would be really in the way right now in my life. So I had to kind of do things differently. Damn, somehow your house. Tell them to hurry up. Yeah, unfortunately, she was only born this year, so I gotta wait a while.
Come on, chop chop, get older.
Yeah.
Grow.
Pay your taxes.
A 1-year-old looking up at you happy.
Yeah.
Don't know what you're saying. They're just like they're being talked to.
Yeah. They're like, "Hi, Dad."
Hey.
So, yeah. But yeah, it's a good time, and things are going to be coming back on the channel, which I really need because honestly, my channel's kind of been in a spiral for the last like handful of months. It's what happens when you just don't make content for half of a year. So
yeah.
But yeah, things are coming. But with that, I guess we'll go ahead and say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.